networker is like a great interviewer.
I'm huge on authenticity, guys. It's a big part of my message.
Claim your local listings and don't get caught paying someone for your local listing.
If you want to be successful, you got to do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times.
And when in doubt, give to other people and don't expect anything in return. But in giving to other people and helping them, it almost always comes back.
It's using the power of partnership, creating trusted partner networks to work with you to make your company be an offer more than just you.
They've done 90% of the work. It's your job to do the last 10% to meet them in the middle.
Don't let the fear of losing be greater than the excitement of winning.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Ask Valor Masterminds podcast, brought to you by our sponsors, Advanced Septic Services and Advanced Septic Services. My name is Galen.
I'm Joe.
We're coming at you virtually from the BD local studios in Tacoma, Washington. So, Joe, for our new listeners and viewers tuning in, thanks for tuning in. Tell everyone how our podcast came to be.
Absolutely. So it first started out as a Facebook group page where we wanted to bring different businesses together to kind of communicate with one another, share tips, ask questions, and kind of just help one another out. And we thought, what a better way than to do that in a podcast setting, to where we bring on different guest speakers to talk about any and all topics related to businesses, so that our audience can take 1 or 2 little nuggets of information and implement it into their business.
Awesome. Thank you. So before we introduce our guest, our last episode, we had 2 ladies on with Vava Virtual, Melanie and Lauren. So what was one of your key takeaways from our previous episode with them?
Well, right away, we learned that VAs are not robots, that they're actual people. But more importantly, I learned that a lot of times when you hire office staff, during their downtime, you're paying them to check their Facebook page and do other things. Whereas if you hire a VA, VAs are more productive than a lot of times full-time office staff, because they're only paid for the time and the tasks that they complete.
Awesome. So correct. I mean, a lot of it is what I thought going in was, VAs just answer phones or schedule, but that's probably only 20% of their actual work on how you could maximize everything. Mm-hmm. And they are real people, like in the US. So, it's not someone in a foreign country answering your phones. But yeah. So Joe, take it away. Terry Dry, welcome to our podcast. But before we get to talking with you, Joe, can you give a formal introduction of Mr. Dry, please?
Absolutely. So Terry Dry is, believe it or not, he's the godfather of social media. So Terry is an award-winning marketer, entrepreneur, strategic advisor, CEO, and executive coach. As the founder of Future Proof Advisors, Terry specializes in advising mid-market businesses and their executive teams on how to overcome barriers that inhibit growth. Regarded as a pragmatic visionary, Terry is best known for pairing innovative thinking with practical solutions that help organizations transform their operations and achieve meaningful success. Not only does Terry advise existing companies, but he also builds and transforms his own ventures. Most recently, he co-founded, scaled, and then profitably exited RSVD, a SaaS or SaaS business that provides digital capacity management solutions for retail, food, and hospitality industries. Terry is a consumer-engaged pioneer who, prior to Future Proof Advisors, co-founded and scaled Fanscape, one of the first ever social media marketing agencies, which he grew from an initial investment of only 10 grand into an 8-figure acquisition by Omnicorn. Terry began his career in the music industry with his role as VP Artist Development at Interscope or Universal Music Group. So everyone, welcome the godfather of social media himself, Terry Dry.
Wow, do I feel old?
Well, Terry, welcome to our podcast. You're clearly overqualified to be talking to us, but we want to pick your brain today. And for our audience, just get a couple of nuggets, because a consumer engagement pioneer is something that I think businesses should include, from just the small mom and pop to, as you see, some like SaaS companies, bigger brands. So any nuggets that you provide would be great. So before we got on, we went over the outline, but I forgot to do the 3 questions. So we asked 3 questions of all our guests. So we'll kind of get started there. So you feel old, but I'm not trying to make you feel older. But what are some lessons learned you could share with our audience that you learned as an early entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'll do that. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. Second of all, I want to say that I use VAs and I strongly recommend it. So I'm a big fan, and it's been a huge transformation for me. Now, to your question, you want early lessons from
Yes.
being early entrepreneur? Where do I begin? Oh my God. First of all, be aware of your fear, right? That was a lesson. I didn't think I was afraid. And I was gung-ho and bullish and naive, which was all probably helpful. Then came the moment where we had to, long story, but the cops came and threw us out of my partner's basement because we had too many tow trucks coming. And so we have all those good, too many delivery trucks coming. So we have all those good stories. All of a sudden we had to get this big office space in Hollywood. And I went from my cushy big job at a record company to writing the first and last month's rent at this big office space. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to do it. I take out the pen to write the check and my hand is shaking like you wouldn't believe. And I didn't realize how scared I was till that moment. So be aware of your fear is a good one. Don't be afraid to pivot would be another lesson learned. We pivoted several times, probably in the first year. And then I would say with each business I've done, we've pivoted. I'm currently process of pivoting one right now. And the other lesson, the last lesson I'd say is hold on to your A players. Like if you get a great person and a great A player, they don't grow on trees. You want to hold on to them. You know, there's great adage, hire for attitude and train for skill. If you get those people, invest in them and grow them.
Nice. So as an entrepreneur, what is the best piece of advice that you have been given?
You know, it started when I was like an intern. I interned in the record business, and I come from the Midwest, and then I moved out here to LA, and I, just was gung-ho, like going for it. And one of the people kind of took me under his wing and just said, you know what, if you're just kind and respectful, if you do what you say you're going to do, and this was my favorite thing, and you're just normal, that's what he said, you're going to be ahead of so many people. And I was like, what a strange piece of advice. Like, I'm like, that's it. But then I learned that like just showing up on time and doing what you say you're going to do as an intern was a big deal, especially in the music business. And it's great advice that I often give to people. And it's funny, when I've had recruiters, I always say, find me people who are normal. And everybody always laughs at me, but I'm like, I'll set you what the culture is. And I'm looking for sort of well-adjusted, mature, normal people who, aren't drug addicts, aren't drunks, aren't crazy, and this is not easy to find. Like,
right.
And so it may sound like just second nature to anybody listening, but there's something about just being human, essentially. Be a good person and good things happen and be reliable.
Love it. So then third question then is, being that we're a marketing company, and this is more of a marketing podcast as well, why is marketing your business so important?
Yeah, it's a great topic. And I certainly looked at what your business is. I always talk about the distinction between advertising and marketing. And I think there's a big distinction. And I think a lot of people get caught up in thinking they're the same thing, but they're really not. And I'm a huge believer in marketing. And I always hope that you don't have to do advertising. I love this concept. Advertising is the price you pay for having a crappy product. Nice. Right? Yep. And so if you have a great product and you're doing great marketing, then good things should happen. And so I guess I'm full of all my little quotes today, but one of the lines I always use is, good things are attracted, not pursued. So that's why you want to do the marketing, right? You need to talk about what's the value you're providing, and you need to put that out in the universe. And I know that what you guys do as far as SEM and optimization and things like that are part of amplifying that, which is fantastic. But if you just keep putting out there, this is who we are, this is what we do, and marketing that in a way that's valuable, you're not interrupting people, you're not annoying people, you're actually giving something of value, lots of good things will happen. And then number one with marketing is, if you're doing your marketing well and you have a valuable product, it should sell for you, meaning there should be word of mouth, there should be referrals, there should be all these good things that come of it. So that's marketing. I mean, this podcast, the way Joe had explained it to me, this is a great version of you guys doing marketing. You're trying to provide value back to everybody who's a partner with your company. And I think that's great. So I hope that's answering your question, but it's the most important thing, maybe second to deliver value, right? Have a great product, have a great value, solve some kind of problem, and then you want to market it versus advertise it.
Nice.
I got one more question, just kind of an impromptu question. So in the music industry, can you share us like your favorite story of the music industry? So I know you said Interscope, and I know like Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre, and they formed Beats and $1 Billion Sale. But in the music industry, I know there's always different kind of stories. Is there one you could share with us now that was your favorite in the music industry?
Oh, all the really bad stories are coming to my mind of people who were mean.
That works too, so that'll help increase our views.
But we're being recorded. So I did used to work for Jimmy Iovine. I worked with Dr. Dre. I worked with these people. It was good. I'm trying to think of what, all the nasty stories are coming to my mind. I could tell you it was cool. I can tell you I had the dream job. Actually, it'll help on the entrepreneurial side. I kind of worked my way up through the 90s, which was, in my opinion, the last era of like when it was fun. This is before digital completely disrupted the business.
Yep.
And I kind of was like, I'm going to run a record company one day. And I mean, you name it. I was with the celebrity. I was on tour. I was that guy backstage or to the side of the stage. I had all these experiences and it was wonderful until it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you'd start to dread being with that celebrity. You would not want to answer your phone at midnight when somebody was upset because the record company didn't throw a party for them. You didn't I could go on, and that's somebody who is famously from Washington State area. We'll leave it there. And so in the 90s. So, but it was just
pre-Twitter, right? Pre-Twitter, you would get blown up on Twitter. So
all of that. So they're calling your house, and you're like, do I really have to take this call at midnight on a Friday to hear some disgruntled artist's ego? So after a while, it starts to wear off. And I can vividly remember being sort of at the concert on the side of the stage with the hottest band at the time. And I could say I did a lot with Eminem, who I think is wonderful. It was awesome. And it was a great experience. And I'm standing there going, people would kill to be in my shoes. And all of a sudden I realized I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be in control of my own thing. And it was kind of weird. I'm like, I'm in my late 20s. I'm in theory cool. And this is fun. It's exciting. You're meeting celebrities and you're doing all this stuff. But all of a sudden I was like, okay, I did this. Like now I want to go on my entrepreneurial journey. So
right.
I don't know if that's helpful.
So eventually you stopped doing what was at beginning the best job and you started following your passion to create something to help people, correct?
Yeah. And I found my passion too, right? So I think it's a good question, Joe. It's like, I just was laser focused. I'm going to run a record company. And then you get in there and you start to see, oh, this isn't Disneyland. Like this isn't perfect. It's not Xanadu. Like there's a lot of flaws here. And then when you're in your late 20s, you're still I'm going to say this in a good way, naive enough to go, I could do this better than these guys. These guys don't know what they're doing, and right. So you go and start your own business and you figure out, oh, okay, there's a lot more to it. I also realized, honestly, I wanted to connect fans and the artists they loved, and the internet afforded that opportunity. And my whole job was artist development. So I talk about Eminem. I was with him like when no one would have known who he was. And as he started to ascend, and he ascended very fast, like it was fun to try to help artists connect with their fans and create that core. And we had this belief, it wasn't just me, I had a partner and all that. We had this belief that we could use the internet to sort of cut out all the middlemen, whether it was radio, MTV, record companies, and allow artists to connect directly with their fans. And so that's what we set out to do, because we thought that would be, to your point, Joe, really helping people, helping both sides. And there was nothing more rewarding than making that connection between artist and fan, because I grew up a fan. I grew up the guy waiting outside the backstage door to get an autograph. Like I did all that stuff. So it was fun to be able to enable that kind of communication another way. And I guess that's why you're calling me the godfather of social media, which makes me really uncomfortable. I'm only the godfather to my nephew is the only real thing I could say. But we were early on social media, and this explanation is why. It was our happy accident. Music kind of lent itself to social first. We came out of music. We were doing all this sort of, we always jokingly say it was social before it was called social, and helping connect these dots. And then along came things like MySpace and others that showed that were a platform to help us do what we were doing even better.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So before we get into the meat of everything, so Joe, can you talk a little bit about our Valor Cares initiative before we get going? Something we're really proud of that we launched during COVID in April of 2019. Give our audience, listeners and viewers a little tease about our Valor Cares initiative, please.
Sure. So our Valor Cares initiative is really just a way for us to give back to the community, back to local businesses, both here in Washington as well as really anywhere in the U.S. and potentially even overseas. But if you don't have a website, or you have a website that your best friend's brother's cousin built in his basement that you don't have access to, or just your website is just really outdated and you're in need of a new website to represent your company online, then we give away free website builds every single month, 2 to 3 free website builds. You can go to our askvalormasterminds.com website, and there's going to be a page that says Valor Cares. Just go and submit your information, and then we pick different businesses every month.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Now we come to the part of our podcast, our Advanced Septic Pump You Up quote of the day. We asked Terry to give us a quote, so I'll read that and then get his feedback. So by Leonardo da Vinci, people of accomplishment rarely sit back and let things happen to them. They went out and made things happen. So why did this quote, you kind of shed a little bit of light on it, but tell us your inspiration for this quote.
Well, I think it's really about the entrepreneurial mindset too, and a growth mindset of being a self-starter. And I always work well with self-starters, and I look for self-starters, and I believe, the audience that we're talking about of small and mid-sized businesses and trying to grow, there's something about just that simple phrase of like, don't just sit back and wait, like go out and make things happen. There's, there's all these concepts out there of create your own weather or however you want to look at it. But it's being proactive about, I want to go get this. I have a vision for what it is. I believe it's going to solve a problem or help people in some way, and I'm going to go make it happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you do see a lot of people sit back. I don't know if you want to call it entitled, but there's a little bit of that sort of passive side to it. And there's also a lot of people, which God bless them, like nothing wrong with it. That's just not in their DNA. And that's totally fine. But it's for this kind of mentality, or you're asking me about something that I look for, something that I always inspire my teams with. It's that's the kind of spirit I look for.
Love it.
Thank you.
I've silenced you guys with that one. That was
So now we come to the part of our segment, our Did You Know? So as we transition into what Terry's going to share with us for kind of creating a resourceful mindset, we'll kind of build up to it. So this is something he shared with us, and I was intrigued to find out what his thought process is with this. So don't ever try to solve a problem that has already been solved. So it sounds pretty straightforward, but obviously companies probably do it to, relentless perfection or thinking they don't have anything. What are your thoughts on that to our audience?
Yeah, I think we all do this. And I got this quote from somebody when we were, building one of our businesses, and it was one of the venture capitalists we were meeting with. And that was one of his rules. It's like, I don't want to invest in a company, that doesn't think like this. Meaning if you're not solving a problem, then that's number one. And by the way, don't try to solve a problem that somebody else or has already been solved in some way. And I've always tried to apply that also to our businesses, which is if somebody's already got the answer or somebody's already figured something out, then I'm better off partnering with them, and exponentially we grow. I'll give you an example. As we were building our SaaS business, and you read that such a nice bio about me, I feel so uncomfortable, but thank you for hyping me up. Speaking of the music business, Joe could be my hype man on the road, which is, a very cool job to have, actually. Kind of fun. But, when we were building our SaaS business, we were looking at, okay, we want to build all this infrastructure, right? You want to build all this technology, but I think we had this vision for what it was going to do. And we're trying to raise millions of dollars to build this technology. And as we get into it, we're like, well, wait a minute. there's several other competitors here that are way ahead of us on the technology side. They may, in our opinion, they weren't as ahead of us on some of the thinking or the vision. So I'm like, well, why would I try to raise $2 million to just build what these guys already built? Let me see if I can license it from them, which is not easy. You're competitive or whatever. But what came of that whole thing was we wound up selling our company to one of the competitors because they really had a much better version. They were further along. We shared the vision, and that partnership I think has helped us both grow better and faster. So that's where that mentality of like, just be careful of trying to solve a problem that's already been solved. And there's networks and partnerships now more than ever through technology that can get done. And it's just something to keep in your mind. You know, do you have to do that, or could somebody else do that better?
This one's a good segue into that. The right answer is out there somewhere. You will benefit if you are resourceful and you go out and try to find it. So I love that story of, instead of trying to build it yourself, if there's the problem that's already been solved and you have another competitor that could help you get to your goal or something, you just have to go out and find it. So to those entrepreneurs out there who they may not have as complex like a resource field to look to, what are some things that you could tell our audience on just kind of that, creating that mindset, trying to get there of thinking outside the box, outside of your kind of your tunnel vision?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. So on the most tactical side of it, Google is your friend, right? There's no excuse to not be resourceful now, because there's, you know, or I can just turn right here to my Echo Show and ask something, and knowledge, you know, becomes a commodity, right? But resourcefulness is a whole other ball game, and you can start that way. The other part is, to your point, is it's the mindset, right, of being resourceful. Is I don't have all the answers, you know, but the right answer is out there somewhere, right? It's that piece of it, right? That I don't know everything, but everyone knows something kind of concept. And so if you're not open-minded, if you're not looking around, if you're not, in the case of a small business, I always encourage, meet your competitors, like know them, have lunch with them, understand them, learn, like you're all in the same business. Life's too short to be at each other's throats. There's ways to be helpful and beneficial. For us, we had a competitor who had sold their company before we did. We were always friendly with them. I can't tell you how valuable that relationship was when we went into selling our company, and the kind of information that they gave us. And it was just very nice that way. So yeah, it's about just being resourceful and recognizing that somewhere, someone has a point of view, has an answer, has a solution that might help you get a lot further faster. Don't just stay within your four walls or your tunnel vision. Don't let your ego take over, that you have to know you're right, and to get outside of that and be resourceful. And it's pretty amazing what can happen.
Real quick on that, then this morning I had an appointment with a business out in the UK, a graphic design company, met through networking. And that was the one thing she mentioned, like, hey, I already work with one SEO company in the UK. I would love to find another one. Right away, my brain ticked in with that networking. And I'm like, actually, we have a future podcast guest that we're going to bring in on that actually does what we do in the UK. So it's just that easy. Who can I refer you to right away? Is there someone I know that I can help fill that need?
Being the dot connector, right? It has value of being open and everything. So
yes, definitely.
So this one, mindset is 80% of the challenge and success rate in business. So oftentimes we run into a lot of entrepreneurs, small business people that think the opposite. It's the 20% that they focus 80% of the effort on, thinking that you have to follow a playbook, as opposed to, you know, you're limiting growth. You know, it's that tunnel vision kind of mentality. So you've been there and done that. You know, you're the godfather. So I feel we should, it's like, I almost feel like we should kiss your social media ring,
That is
the godfather, right? So maybe we'll create a ring and like send it to you that way. But mindset is 80% of the challenge and success rate. Talk to us about that real quick, please.
Well, it's something that I think people, at least for me, it took me till I got older or further along in my entrepreneurial journey to really recognize how important mindset, energy, and all those things were for the business. You know, you just get into this mode, to your point, of like, I've got the playbook, I've got the plan, I'm going to do it. And as you grow and as you scale, it's especially as the leader, which I know we're talking to a lot of entrepreneurial leaders, it's less about kind of what you do and more about who you are, and so that mindset of having a growth mindset and not having self-limiting beliefs can really, really help propel your business forward. But it also sort of opens your mind to the things that we've been talking about before. And so I think people can underestimate how important mindset and energy is to the success of a business. And what also the thing that, I had to be told, once we went from 5 people to 10 people to 30 to 50 to 100, like, then you start to realize like, hey, they're all watching you, back when we were all in an office, it's a little different now, but who you say hello to, what you do, what your body language is like, all that kind of stuff is everybody's feeding off of that. And what you say, as far as your mindset, is it coming from a place of fear or is it coming from a place of abundance? So just being mindful of your mindset can really help, and hopefully, really having a growth mindset can really propel the success rate in business.
So I'm gonna ask a follow-up question that you can
and
go
hold
either
on,
two ways.
I'm not great at
go ahead.
this. I'm still trying to be better at this. I'll be the first to say, like, I'm not great at it. Like it's a lifelong education piece. So sorry to interrupt you, but I don't want to.
No worries.
I am not the godfather, and I'm not like some genius. I'm somebody who's trying to be helpful, but I appreciate all the accolades. I will tell my kids.
Awesome. So to our entrepreneurs out there, so I'll ask it either, you could answer either one of two ways. So are there 1 or 2 things you see a lot of entrepreneurs do wrong, or are there 1 or 2 things that you could give them that they could immediately start doing to help them get on their way to create this kind of this mindset, this resourceful mindset? So
yeah, I think what happens is what I see, and look, we advise a bunch of companies and we do those kinds of things, and we see what can often happen is the entrepreneur winds up being the sort of tactician, right? And rather than the leader. So it's kind of that difference between leading and managing. And they wind up almost regressing into this doing, and I'm going to get this stuff done, versus growing, leading, and delegating. So I find a lot of that, and it's hard. Old habits are hard to break. And these things, are real. And sometimes they're screwing up, right? You've got to do that, especially in a small business. You've got to have your hands and stuff. But if you get into this mentality, there's a great book that I recommend called Who, Not How, written by Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan. And it's a concept of who, not how, which is, okay, we've got a lot of stuff to do as I build my business. Who's going to get it done? Not how am I going to get it done, but who am I going to find to get this done? And that little concept could sort of set yourself free as an entrepreneur. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs that fall into the, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? How am I going to do? It's like, no. Go be resourceful and find that person or that thing or that resource or that tool or that agency or that company that's going to help you do that and get further faster, without you having to actually do it yourself. Because, by the way, you're not the expert at all these things. How can you be? So try to find those people. And that's a trap that I find entrepreneurs fall into, that you try, at least I try to help, whether we're coaching or advising, whatever, you try to help break people of that. But it's difficult, it's your baby, and it's not, and guess what? All of the people that you delegate to, they're not all A players as those things. So maybe it's not as good, but if you get comfortable with good enough, you can get further faster.
So what do you say to the people then that say, I don't want to be that resourceful because it costs too much?
The question would be the inversion, right? How can you afford not to be? What would that make possible for you if you did invest in that? Instead of looking at it as a cost, it's an investment, and that's really hard, right? When you're a small business, you're like, I've been there a million times. Oh shit, I got to make payroll, like that all sounds wonderful, but my business went down a little bit and I've got a mortgage and I've got, but that's the change in the mentality of like, are you building enterprise value and growth? Then you're making investments. And if it does feel like a cost, then you really got to look at it. Why am I doing this?
Right.
Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and we see it all the time, Joe and I, like everyone, the business owner wants to wear like multiple hats. And then it's the pride of, I don't want to give this person this hat to wear, probably because it's like trust. It's not surrounding, you're not getting your A players, and then similar to like you touched early, our previous guest, the virtual assistant, like, oh, it's a cost. But if you hire a full-time person, then you're offsetting, you're maximizing like what you do well, as opposed to an entrepreneur settles to do a lot of things okay, focus on what you do really well that makes the company most of the money, and then delegate the stuff like the other work, the stuff that you can focus on the growth. Everyone else focuses on kind of your playbook, right? You touched that earlier. So
yeah, and it's so easy to say, so hard to do, and kind of we've all been there. But you're exactly right. It's like this investment in an assistant is because I can push that work down and it frees me up to do what I'm good at. And investment in other people is I can do that because what does that make possible for me? And that's all towards I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to grow the assistant. I'm trying to grow everyone. That's always my thing. But for businesses, this is sort of that hurdle to get over when you're trying to scale. And it's a decision, at a certain point, you'll get to a place where you're like, is this a lifestyle business or is this something I want to grow? Have I become a slave to the business, even though I set it up to serve my life? Am I now serving that business? Which again, we've all been there. I've been there a bunch of times. And just reframing, okay, what am I trying to do? Having a real North Star plan. That's the other thing you find is a lot of these entrepreneurs don't really have, their plan is I got to make payroll and I hope I make more money, and instead of like, what am I really trying to build here? What's my 3-year, 5-year goal? And then how will I back out of it? And that's why I set up my company Future Proof, is exactly that. It's this kind of group of what I like to call superheroes or advisors that can come in and help small and middle-sized businesses scale and grow just by, we've been there, we've done it. And it's what I wish I had on when you guys call me the godfather of social media. Like if I was really the godfather of social media, you'd know my name, like we would have done it a lot better because I would have surrounded myself with and my partner and I, with these advisors and these really wise people that would have helped us realize things that we just didn't see because we were busy just making payroll and doing the doing, when we were sitting on huge assets and things that we hadn't really figured out yet. So that's why I'm setting up something now and doing it to help people because it's what I wish I had years ago, but didn't realize I needed it.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about that as we kind of wrap up. Who are the kind of businesses that you like to help with future-proof advisors? Is there a profile of a company that fits to how you could optimize them?
Yeah, there's kind of the key places we focus are small and mid-sized businesses. Number one, so independently owned, entrepreneurially led usually, and people who want to grow and want to scale and maybe have hit a barrier or a wall or just unsure and it's very lonely being the entrepreneur and being the leader. And when they kind of come to that, it's like we try to surround them with everything from coaching, advising, et cetera. So that's one part that we look at. The other part is, are we a good fit for each other, right? We vet them as much as they should vet us. Of like, can we help you? And by the way, do we like you? Like I've been lucky to be in a place in my career, where we can be that picky and do we believe in what you're trying to do? And then we look at like, where's our expertise? And we're kind of really settled into 3 verticals, one being service agencies, call it marketing, advertising agencies, because that's our background and having like an exit with Omnicom and things like that. And then also e-com businesses. We do a lot of work with e-com. And then we're also a little bit in the health and wellness space too, from healthcare startups and things like that. So that's sort of the verticals we focus on. And that's how we do it. And that's who we look for. But luckily, they've been looking for us a bunch too, which is kind of nice.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, Joe, one last plug for our Valor Cares initiative real quick, Joe.
Sure. As simple as it could possibly be. If you need a website built for your company and you're looking to have a free website built, go to our website, askvalormasterminds.com, click on Valor Cares and submit your information. And we hope to be talking to you soon.
Awesome. So thanks to our guest, Terry Dry. If James Brown was the hardest working man in show business and you're in the Godfather of Soul, we have the Godfather of social media, just trying to bring that musical connection together, right?
I need his cape. And
there you go. We need a cape and, your whole entourage behind you. Thank you so much for spending time and sharing with our audience kind of those key little nuggets. We'll have your contact info So feel free to reach out to Terry and Future Proof Advisors if any of our listeners and viewers need any help. But on behalf of our sponsors, Advanced Septic Service, or sponsor, Advanced Septic Services, my name's Galen.
I'm Joe.
Coming at you virtually from the BD Local Studios in Tacoma, Washington. Thanks for watching this episode of the Ask Valor Masterminds podcast. Thanks, guys.
Have a good day.
Thank you so much.